Well, here we are again. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and boy have I missed it. Last one out in the wind, windy McWind City, and I was thinking about re-recording it, but no one's ever going to listen to it, which is fine. But if I ever happen to need to come back to it to try and listen to it, then I'm kind of fucked, because I don't think you can really hear any of it, but who gives a shit, you know? Anyway, it was half term, so the house wasn't really free for me to do any of these, because if I ever did one where people were listening, I'd probably fucking want to kill myself again. Back to those good old days. Okay, let's just get on with it. Let's get this fucking over with. After re-listening to Sam's... Jesus Christ, can I type? After re-listening to Sam's podcast with Siddhartha Mukherjee, I think was his name, and hearing Siddhartha... Oh, this was a stupid one. I wrote this one while I was walking, that's why it's all fucked up. And also, I should have just listened 20 seconds later. Anyway, after re-listening to Sam's podcast with Siddhartha Mukherjee, and hearing Siddhartha's third point of contention about the issues with about the issues with intelligence studies, he argues that the studies are fundamentally circular in their reasoning, in that they define intelligence in a way that is dependent upon the results with which they are then supposed to define intelligence. Okay, anyway. God, if I could just... I can't write clearly, and then I can't read. So I'm really writing things down and then reading them to record it is not an ideal situation for me. He argues that the studies are oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, let's just find where we were now. Right, now I think I can see where he's coming from, especially if he accurately encapsulates his opinion with his blue eye beauty analogy. He states that if we define having blue eyes as beautiful, we will undoubtedly find a genetic component to blue eyes, and will subsequently surmise that there is a genetic component to beauty. My issue with this argument is that he seems to refuse the idea that these definitions of beauty, for example, should be subject to public opinion. However, it's hard to see how rather than public opinion, instead general consensus can be ignored in a definition which is, at least by my understanding, generated for that very purpose. Allow me to illustrate my point as the following. In the blue eye example, instead of substituting the word beauty for intelligence, substitute the understanding of the colour blue for intelligence. There is a general consensus with regards to what the colour blue describes. People see some things that reflect or emit light of a particular range of wavelengths and agree to call things of that colour blue. So in this hypothetical scenario, imagine the contention surrounding not whether blue eyes conferred beauty, but instead whether blue eyes were in fact blue at all. Imagine if a group of people came along and instead referred to what everyone else referred to as blue. I'm guessing I didn't put that in there. What everyone else referred to as blue as Broggle. This would be confusing enough, of course, but ultimately, despite the difference in letters and pronunciation, they were describing the exact same physical manifestation in the world. Now imagine if for some reason they called what everyone else called blue green. This would be even more confusing. In fact, in the Broggle scenario, this is much the same situation we find ourselves in when learning a new language, or conversing with someone who speaks a different language. The words being used for expression are entirely dissimilar from one another, but the objects of the language are identical. And so with the term intelligence, my argument is... it's not as if it's my argument. I'm not debating anyone, am I? Jesus Christ! And so with the term intelligence, my argument is that although Siddhartha is right about the assumptions of intelligence's components, these assumptions are intentional. They describe the object being investigated by the study. The definition precedes the investigation. And it is entirely reasonable to argue that intelligence might not encompass all things we wish to associate with good and smart people, but the problem there is with liketing. Jesus Christ, that's not a word. Linking, maybe? No. Likening? But the problem there is with likening the vocabulary being used to one word. Limiting. Jesus Christ. But the problem there is limiting the vocabulary being used to one word. The solution is not to try to alter the meaning and understanding of the word intelligence, but invent new words which do capture all the things you want to convey, or find existing words which already perform this function. And of course the exact response is provided by Sam seconds after I posed this question. I paused the podcast to write this. I probably subconsciously remembered Sam's line of thought from the last time I listened to it. Okay. That's great. Well, I don't think I could have stumbled and fumbled my way through that any more than I did. But hey-ho. Hey-ho. My reservations from when I was depressed about not becoming an electrical engineer because I lacked the capacity to be a genius at it, can be somewhat overcome by the understanding that doing it to a sufficient degree to have fun is all that is necessary. Now that I can find enjoyment in designing, constructing, and understanding circuits and systems that won't necessarily change the world, this is short-lived. It doesn't matter that they won't change the world. I understood this when I was so-called depressed, but my reservations were that I doubted I could enjoy it without the knowledge that it would change the world. This doubt has been resolved, and hasn't. So instantly after. So great. Thing Day, a day celebrated annually, where you make use and play with every single thing you own. What a stupid idea. What a twat. A regular 330... This was a weird time, this day. I just wrote a load of fucking bullshit, man. They're all so stupid. A regular 330 milliliter can of Diet Coke contains around 187.5 milligrams of aspartame, which is a precursor to phenylalanine, which is a precursor for phenylethylamine and tyrosine, and therefore dopamine. I have stipulated before whether phenylethylamine might be the genius molecule given its structural similarity to methamphetamine, and of course there could be no more damning evidence than the fact that the much revered Elon Musk was addicted to Diet Coke. Therefore, it's the source of his power. Perhaps the raw source of his power. Perhaps people become addicted to Diet Coke, or Diet Coke apparently, because it does shoot dopamine levels up more than sugar. And maybe these people are more efficient at converting phenylalanine to phenylethylamine and dopamine. And perhaps this is why I've never really cared for it and felt little effect when taking 500 milligrams of L-phenylalanine tablets. Basically, what I'm saying is Diet Coke is crystal meth. Not really, but it probably does act through the same activation pathway, only via endogenous compounds rather than exclusively synthetic ones. And obviously it's not nearly as potent, but still, it's basically meth, except not at all. Oh man, this was a fucking what's it called? Dead end? Yeah, this is a dead end of line of thinking that I went down for a long time. Synapses are just switches, capable of closing off parts of the unimaginably complex parallel circuit. If transistors were neurons, gate switches between transistors would act like synapses, and each transistor would need to be capable of influencing multiple other transistors and choose to activate some without others, and be capable of being activated by many different other transistors individually. I'm also curious as to whether increasing salt intake can improve cognitive and overall nervous system function. That was something that I thought when I first started learning biology in like year 7 or something, when we were learning about just the way your nerves work. Your neurons work, rather. And it was, I remember there being a big push for basically cutting salt entirely out of your diet, and it seemed odd to me. I felt like if sodium is the main element obviously you need sodium, potassium, calcium, all sorts of shit going on in there, but sodium and potassium seem like the main ones, so bananas and friggin' crisps. I don't know, that's sort of pork scratchings. It seemed strange to me that obviously it seems to be a correlation with heart conditions. But yeah, I just wonder if it's actually quite good for your brain. And I think that probably is. But who gives a shit? Who gives a shit what I fucking think? Not even me. Not even I care. Good God. Okay, where was I up to? A website that allows people to buy PDF. So I got a Kindle. I got a Kindle Paperwhite. A little gift for doing so well in my university degree. Oh God, yeah, I really deserved it. But yeah, I got a little Kindle. I don't think I was going to use that much. Tried it out. Pretty bloody good. I read Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5. I didn't think it was that great. Don't tell anyone, because it's meant to be amazing, but I really didn't fucking care for it that much. But I really like... one of the things I don't like about reading is getting that... I hate when you're reading, because I often read in bed with a lamp, and on one page it'll be fine, and then you turn to... and then having to read on the other side, there's a shadow cast from the other page, and it's just annoying. And I hate how cumbersome books are. And you can't really read on any side, but and I really like the technology. I like e-ink, man. It's fucking cool. So yeah, I like the Kindle. Oh fuck. Fuck. I'll close everything. Hang on. Okay, a website that allows people to buy PDF forms of books direct from authors to be used on e-readers, Kindle, and the like. Allowing people to purchase the books for much less and for the authors to make more money, take a potentially 100% cut than through a print publisher. More money than through a print publisher. Because I've heard that they get like 5% of the sales. Stupid. They fucking wrote the book. It's all in advertising and publishing and all that crap, which is pretty stupid. But if you just... I guess it'd be hard to monitor, I guess. Anyway, that's a little idea. I wish it was still the time where the did you just assume my gender meme was around, because some of them are crazy. What was the one I had ages ago? I think it was just did you just assume your gender? I like that one. And did you just assume my agenda? You can't say that as some kind of specific scenario. If it turns out that I am bipolar, yesterday was the day the downswing started. So basically, taking Tyrosine in the evening stopped working after a while. I think it might have been just because my sleep was so fucked up by it. I just started to take its toll, and then I stopped feeling the benefits. But now I've started taking it in the morning for about 2 days. So obviously, that's really enough time to make a judgment and say it clearly works, 100% guaranteed, money back guarantee. But yeah, I'm liking taking it in the morning again. It's probably, don't tell real Ollie, but it's probably just placebo. But so long as he thinks that it's working, that's fine. So we'll just keep quiet about it. Okay, don't tell him. Oh, he's coming back. So yeah, I'm doing that, and I've also started drinking caffeinated coffee again. I've been on the decaf coffee, but you know what? And the reason I didn't want to do this was because when I was depressed, I hated the idea. I don't like the Tim Ferriss. I mean, everyone loves Tim Ferriss, right? But I don't like the whole... I feel like if you get started... it seemed like, I guess it was the slippery slope logical fallacy, but if you start taking caffeine, then why not start microdosing fucking mushrooms, LSD, and... mainly modafinil. Why not start taking modafinil? And I don't really want to fucking get into modafinil and all that crap. But caffeine's easy. Everyone does it. Come on. Be cool, man. What's wrong with caffeine? It's cool, man. It's just cool. And I quite like coffee anyway. So yeah, I thought I'd make a bit. And I've always liked my Lavazza little machine. God, that little Lavazza Modo Mio. Yeah, I don't like espressos much, but when you top it up with a bit of boiling water, oh, that's a beauty. Okay. Oh, fuck. I've lost my place. There we go. I came up with a handy little definition for ignorance and arrogance the other day, and I really fucked it up. I couldn't remember it properly anyway. If I can remember correctly, it went something like this. Ignorance is not knowing what you... Oh, for fuck's sake. Ignorance is not knowing what you don't know, whilst arrogance is believing you know things you don't. Wow. How are you smart to that? These are not perfect in their rendition or utility, but they are perfectly the ones which came to mind just now. A pretty obvious thought, but I'd like to add my name to the list of people who've had it. No matter what war you're fighting, you are fighting ideas, not people. Wow, man. So harsh treatment of prisoners is always questionable. I initially wrote that in a more poetic manner, but it sounded rather twatish. Well, even more twatish than that. I can't remember there was some kind of thought I had. Oh yeah, it was when I was reading fucking Slaughterhouse 5. Jesus Christ, never mind. After listening to the Very Bad Wizard's most recent podcast on The Absurd, my flappy doodles were alerted once more. I've said before that the idea that we must imagine Sisyphus happy doesn't really solve anything. Yeah, I can imagine him not minding doing a repetitive task and accepting that what he does has no meaning if he's not clinically depressed. Again, this idea of meaning is an illusion, but it's an illusion that can be incredibly convincing and one which often serves a purpose, in that it allows us to feel a certain way. It affects our subjective experience. However, this subjective experience is not entirely dependent on the illusion of meaning. And it is in fact possible to find meaning in the pursuit of enhancing your overall desired subjective experience throughout time. The examples of having to pick your kids up from school or go to work being absurd because they don't matter in the overall lifetime and grandiosity of the universe are in themselves absurd things to ponder. They're investments. Yes, you can choose to live in the moment, because ultimately that's all there ever is, but you can also realise that not all moments are equal. Some are better than others, and sometimes you can invest, or gamble if you prefer, with the current moment, or more realistically, the local set of moments, to get a better return in the future. I think one of the problems with this is that people then justify extensive pursuits of a certain job position, or a material possession, but what often happens is the closer you get to it, the less the differential between your current state and the supposed reward becomes, and instead of a great payoff for climbing a mountain of success, it's more like taking the final step up a ladder and ungracefully clambering onto a shitty rooftop without a view of anything. What I'm saying is, I wonder how gambling fits into this. What the fuck? That's not what I'm saying at all. Perhaps this is partly why gambling can be so potent, especially if you win after only a few attempts. The disparity between the current position and the instant payout is so vast, whereas in most other pursuits you're constantly creeping up on the goal, which is constantly in sight. Constantly. And the closer you get, the more you understand it and eventually get bored, like being on an incredibly slow roller coaster towards a small pile of sweets. And of course, it's more like, metaphorically, chasing a mirage. That was a fucking tangent fest. Really didn't hit the point I was trying to make at all. But I think the root of it was things like, what's the point of doing anything if none of it matters in the universe? But if you subscribe to my philosophy, which is clearly just mine, it's basically hedonism, but you fucking realise that some things, but hedonism where you're trying to maximise the area under the curve throughout time, your lifetime, and also acknowledging that there are some pursuits which might not seem immediately pleasurable, but do provide a different kind of pleasure, satisfaction, like, I don't know, being altruistic and just believing that you care about other people has benefits. Right. Shit. Combining my ideas around almost everything being either a scaled up or down version of another thing, e.g. atoms, planets, galaxies, etc., with my idea that natural selection is a more fundamental law that applies to all things constrained by time, is it possible that structures and dynamics are conserved at different scales? For example, certain structures that prove self-sustaining at an atomic level might find similar success in a higher order system. Would this give credence to the ideas like the universe, although quantum physics might make you question this clearly flawed fucking piece of bullshit? Would this give credence to the ideas like the universe is trying to understand itself? No. However, oh crap, I'm coming up on 20 minutes already. No, however, the idea that the internet is like a singular conscious organism isn't quite so well-founded. If the nonsense I started with is true, then perhaps the global internet between people can be considered similar in function. I write another thing about this. Similar in function to a single mammalian brain, with each human playing the role of a single neuron. Some have many connections, some are not beneficial, and die out. Fucking stupid humans. The thing that I'm interested in is whether that mechanism of interconnected units combining to form a sort of hive mind is conserved throughout different scales of intergalactic, throughout different scales, intergalactic maybe, and whether it can also be applied to other structures and mechanisms like, I don't know, gravity. Obviously not that, but something. Basically, I'm wondering if brain-like information processing structures are memes of scale. Memes of scale. Wow. If there's a subconscious belief that swearing, quote-unquote, curses, really does put a curse on someone. Is there a subconscious? Is there some kind of illusionary social dynamic which would give this unknown belief some credence? To be called a cunt is in some ways like having a curse put on you. To those who are aware of the accusation, the degree to which they are convinced of the claim's legitimacy will have a direct impact on how they interact with you. Thanks to my theory about the evolution of swearing, this particular example isn't particularly convincing. However, other words, which would not traditionally be considered swear words or curses, have a more profound effect. Take rapist, for example. Rapist. That kind of felt good to say, which I'm not sure that's good. Now, there are many contexts where it does not have this effect, Xbox Live Chat being a prime example, and the same goes for the word paedophile. But in some cases, accusations with the word can put what is experienced much the same as a curse. In some cases, accusations with the word can put what is experienced much the same as a curse would be if they existed. Toby Turner's experience, again, being a prime example. So yeah, it's kind of like maybe that's why they were called curses. Maybe I could just look it up, but I can't fucking be bothered. Anyway, I wonder if increasing your vocabulary and ability to describe the world and your reaction to it allows you to experience it in ways you would otherwise be incapable of. If you only learn a host of words for describing depressed states and sadness, will you be inclined towards depression, whilst being exposed to nuanced descriptions of happiness and joy would allow you to live a life of bliss? Should we all be reading dictionaries, or maybe just the nice words? Inspired by one of the recent Very Bad Wizard episodes, but also that phenomenon where some secluded tribes who have fewer words to describe different colours are less proficient at distinguishing between them, literally as in being able to tell if there is even another colour at all, not just give a name of it, or more proficient if they have more words. So I think some kind of, I don't know if it was just a language or a tribe or something, had loads of words for green, and they were able to distinguish between loads of different colours of green, obviously because they had more words for it, but also they were actually able to see it, where other people who didn't have the words just saw fewer colours there. Thing Explainer. This is just a book I wanted to read. I thought we should have called Twiggy, or a little Jackawawa. If you look up what a Jackawawa looks like, you'll realise why. We should have called it Santa's really little helper. So yeah. I need to get lost in someone or something, if not both. How to know what that thing or person will be, should be, or is where the problem arises. Many people find art, music, literature to fit this purpose. For some, it's science. Others, sport. Many others, whatever their vocation may be. And many others also find it in family, whether that's people they share their DNA with or people they share their DNA with. If you get that little joke there. I don't know. I might have to stop the recording here and then start another one because I won't be able to send it via email. Right, that's the end of the first part. And this is the beginning of the second part. You're probably going to hear a buzz in a second when that email comes through on my phone. Jesus. Right, I really should restart this one, but I'm not going to. I need to get... Oh, for fuck's sake, just did that one. I think a good way to find... What the fuck? I think a good way to think about the idea that we are at no one point in time the real us. You can't really see my air quotes. Us, or you, also in air quotes, comma, me in air quotes, comma, or I in air quotes. Okay, I'm just going to not do that again. I think a good way to think about the idea that we are at no one point in time the real us, or you, me, or I, etc. is we are all changing. Oh no, fuck's sake! We are all changing from one moment to the next. Is to think. Oh, for fuck's sake, man! I'm going to start all over again. I think a good way to think about the idea that we are not that we are at no one point in time the real us, or you, me, or I, etc. We are all changing from one moment to the next, is to think of us as undergoing continuous firmware updates, much in the same way that we wish to create true AGI, and they will in the trial stages hopefully be undergoing more traditional forms of software updates. We hope eventually that these updates will take the form of learning from their environment and experiences, much like we do, albeit not very well. Much like we do, but we don't do it very well. God, they'll do it brilliantly. We're terrible. I hereby declare the Ollie of this moment, Ollie 16 trillion.0. That's so funny. Oh God, this is a depressing little thing. I think I did this because I started watching a load of Call of Duty videos again because the new Call of Duty's coming out, and also just because the YouTube algorithm decided that I should, because they've probably realised they would make me. Well, I didn't realise, but it turns out it worked. Watched a load of iReaps old montages, and it brought back some memories, man. I was trying to think. Life lessons learned from Call of Duty. Even if you're not... Oh, for fuck's sake, man. Even if you're not the best, not as good as iReaps, people who joined later on in the series became as good as iReaps was in their prime. And better. In less time, because they had the advantage of learning from all that iReaps and others pioneered. This is transferable to other disciplines, e.g. Tesla and electrical engineering. It is exceptionally unlikely that you are or ever will be as much of a genius as Tesla was. But you may, and I imagine many people have become better you may. Oh, for fuck's sake. But you may, and I imagine many people have become better electrical engineers than Tesla. Not that that was his true profession, by dint of their ability to learn and implement the ideas that Tesla grafted to discover. Okay, I need to fucking learn how to write, because I am a fucking Jesus Christ. A small part of me wants to spout something along the lines of, it's all relative. Not that it would be particularly relevant. It really is essential that you enjoy the process of whatever it is you're doing and trying to achieve. No amount of at all costs goal achievement will make up for the at all costs means of achieving them. Wow, that is profound, man. That is real profound. I think my complaints about finding life fulfilling stem from my once held faulty belief that the universe operated within a sort of fulfillment relativism governed framework. But of course, much like with many aspects of moral relativism, this isn't all that true. One would think that fulfillment would be infinitely more conducive to a relativistic mechanism. Oh God, I can't even follow what I'm saying here. One would think that fulfillment would be infinitely more conducive to a relativistic mechanism due to its exclusive subjectivity. Unfortunately, the nature of human neurobiology would suggest otherwise. The very feeling of fulfillment, or any other experience, or feeling for that matter, is determined, almost definitely, by the interaction of our neuroanatomy with the neurochemical balance or imbalances found in it. As such, my previously cherished notion that all people were capable of finding whatever subjective state they wanted, regardless of their physical manifestation in the universe, within reason, was erroneous. Some people will be happier than others, no matter the circumstances. Suck on my big, fat, juicy micropenis. That was clearly worth writing down, Oliver. Well done. Well done. Why did the SpaceX rockets land on a basic flat platform? Why not have a kind of cone shape attached to the platform to ease the landing should it fall over? Perhaps some kind of rope elastic elastic matrix in a kind of arrangement where each band is attached to an equidistant point on a neighbouring part of the wall, forming a kind of donut of elasticity. Well, more like a kind of what do you call the aperture thing that closes on is it just the aperture? I don't know. It closes on the lens of a camera. The thing that swizzles and it's like I think it's a Star Trek door or something, some kind of sci-fi door that opens that same way, that kind of spirals out. Jesus Christ. But you basically make that by connecting loads of strings, and then if the thing falls over, if the rocket falls over, I've seen all those videos of the rockets falling over and exploding. I guess because they're not going to be there on Mars, or I don't really know. But why am I trying to? I mean, what am I doing? How does a true moral relativist respond to a murderer? I don't like doing this because I'm putting people in categories, but from a moral relativistic standpoint, what is the view of a murderer? Surely they'd have to take a stance not dissimilar to, I'm sure they've got their reasons. Which, maybe, hey, I'm not even saying that's wrong. Or maybe that's right. Maybe that's the way to be, man. You don't know me. In fact, that seems to fit pretty well with my subjective experiences, everything, doesn't it, man? Jesus Christ. But not really, because your subjective experience is the only one that matters. I'm far more interested in the best solutions to the problem of thinking and comprehension than understanding the way humans do it already. So whilst I think it is highly beneficial to study the pre-existing structure of the human mind, I'd much rather take a shortcut to finding the best mechanisms of mind possible and to implement these in our AI systems. So yeah, utterly, I mean, that is, could there be a more perfectly, I can't even think of the word right now. It's the word I'm looking for means meaningless, pointless. But it means in vain, and it also means never mind. I'm just saying, there's no why would I even bother writing that or reading that or anything? We're all a mathematical function of the universe, and all these individual functions form a collective function too, obviously, but this is less interesting to me. And it matters what's interesting to me, obviously. I know it's not really that interesting to me, but I had to write that. I'm more interested in the subjective experiences that are capable of understanding and describing their subjective experience to other supposedly subjective experiences. To other supposedly subjective experiencers, as in people who experience. Obviously, the collective consciousness is a common idea, but there's little substantial evidence for it, other than perhaps that our subjective experience seems to arise from information processing of suitable complexity, which in turn is governed by seemingly non-conscious units of neurons communicating with one another. So I suppose the argument goes, who's to say we're not all just neurons in some superconsciousness, and our verbal and visual communication between individuals provides the information processing of this higher being, and much like we assume neurons are unconscious of our consciousness, the higher consciousness is unconscious of ours. But until we see evidence to suggest this, I don't see any reason to believe it. Evidence like attempted communication from the supposed superconsciousness, which is a hard trick for it to pull off if it doesn't exist. I can't bother to try and make sense of anything right now. Well, that was a real tangent. Back to the each of us being a mathematical function thing. We're all the embodiment of the output of the function, which is determined by the most extortionate number of variables. Our genes, our environment, the era in which we live, etc. Well, they're also part of the function itself. But anyway, I take the understanding that the traditional free will is impossible, that the traditional idea of free will is impossible as a given, and hopefully this leads to a better idea of how no person is responsible for what function describes them. Not that such a complex function could ever be described in the lifetime of the universe. Basically, I'm just going to shut up now, after I finish the other one. I really think language, in the broadest definition imaginable, is the foundation of consciousness. Okay, this is nonsense, but anyway. My fast and loose definition is the ability to converse with oneself, whether with verbal, visual, or physical communication, or any other kind you can think of. I think we, with a capital W, thus including superintelligent AGI of the future, can devise a far superior form of language to anyone currently available to us. In fact, I would hope we can design one too intricate and nuanced for lowercase us to understand. God. It's so depressing and stupid. Well, I don't think the internet is conscious. I think it could be if we made it so. If my memory serves me right, the human brain has something in the region of a few billion neurons, with some neurons making upwards of 1,000 connections, and therefore trillions of connections all in all. I'm certain there are billions more devices, although I'm not sure about this thousands of connections. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think I watched some video where they just did the maths of it. But whenever you see a picture of a neuron, when you can ever see an electron microscope image, they have thousands of connections. Anyway, I'm certain there are billions more devices capable of connecting. I'm certain there are billions more devices capable of connecting to the internet, and assume that at least a couple billion are connected at any one time. I could be wrong about that, but given the nature of the internet, they are certainly capable of a similar order of magnitude of connections between them too. If we ever struggle to recreate the computing power of the brain, which I can't ever imagine being the case, it's certainly a fun option to think about. Fuck, man. Jesus Christ. Right, thank God this is over. Good Lord. Goodbye. Good Lord. Good heavens.